Our next one-on-one chat. Incredibly excited to bring Alan Shearer to the stage. Oh, one more time. I need some more for Alan. There we go. He is the Premier League's all-time record goal scorer and current football pundit with BBC's Game Day. Alan is speaking with our partner from The Athletic, Chief Commercial Officer, Sebastian Tomich. So please welcome Alan and Seb. Give it up.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thanks everybody for being here. We're going to have a fun and exciting talk with legendary English footballer Alan Shearer, the Premier League's all-time leading goal scorer, former England captain. Let's start with beyond football. So you retired some years ago. What have you been up to?
TV work. Playing a bit of golf. I love golf. And traveling and working hard for you guys, for The Athletic. I thought it would be really difficult because as a footballer, you go into the game at 15 or 16 and you get absolutely everything done for you, from the day you're in to the day you leave. So I imagined it was going to be really difficult, and that's why you see so many ex-professional footballers letting themselves down, I suppose, when you finish, because you go chasing the drug, and that's what football is that, because when you walk out in front of 80 or 90,000, or score a goal in front of 80 or 90,000, then that is an incredible feeling. You can never, ever get that back once you retire. So, but I was really lucky because I left football and sort of went into another dressing room, which was the BBC, which already had ex-professional footballers working for it. So it was a little bit easier for me than it is a lot of footballers.
Is there anything that's harder?
Well, the TV work's not easy. I mean, I found it really difficult to communicate because I always felt I was going to go into management. So I didn't want to be too analytical, and I didn't want to be too critical when you're going on the TV. But once I realised after 3 or 4 years that I'd had my stint in management, it was only 8 games, and then I realised I wasn't going to go back into it. Then I could sort of get stuck into it a bit more and be critical, because whether you like it or not, you have to do that in TV. But it's certainly not as easy as it looks.
It definitely does not look easy. So so let's talk. You spend all of your time talking about football, the business of football, various players, teams. You also played for many, many years. How has it changed?
Oh, it changed massively. I mean, I left home at I left Newcastle as a 15-year-old and then went down south, 330 miles away it was. So it wasn't as if I could just pop back home to my parents, and that was tough. But it's such a great living. I mean, to actually get paid to play football is, I mean, it sounds crazy because I would still have played football even if I didn't get paid. So then to do that and to go down to Southampton and learn my trade and stay there for a few years and then go off and do other things and go to other clubs. Yeah, it's a bloody amazing life being a footballer, I tell you.
The one thing that has changed, certainly, is the money coming in to football. So we've seen figures of Lionel Messi's record contract. You were once the highest paid transfer fee in English football.
In the world?
In the world.
Yeah. I left Southampton to go to Blackburn in 1992. And I was Britain's most expensive player then, which was 3.3 million. And then I left Blackburn in 1996 to go to Newcastle. And I was the world's most expensive player for 15 million pounds. And I remember when I left the dressing room, one of my former teammates, my captain at Blackburn, said to me, "Oh, there's no pressure then, 15 million pound." And I thought, wow. And I actually said to him, "There's probably never ever going to be a better time to be a footballer financially." How wrong I was.
So the money is coming in, and it's coming in a variety of ways. It's coming in through player transfers. It's coming in through sponsorship. It's also coming in through the teams.
Yeah.
I remember watching you as a kid. And effectively, I had 2 choices of teams to follow: Manchester United or Arsenal. The
Pity on you.
I love Newcastle too.
Oh,
it
that's
was
okay.
really and the league looks completely different today. Is it a good thing for the Premier League to change this much?
Yes, it is. But I think you also have to remember how you got there and your values of who and what you are. Like everything has to grow. But I think the way the Premier League has just continued and will continue, so long as the media, so long as the interest, so long as the TV companies keep on showing an interest and paying these huge fees to the Premier League, then it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now, of course, the owner of Blackburn was a very, very wealthy man. And when we went to Blackburn, we came in to take Manchester United on, and we actually beat them to the Premier League. But he couldn't do what he did then. He couldn't do that today because that's not allowed. I mean, to have several million or even perhaps $1 billion is not enough in football now. It's because of who's coming in, the ownership of football clubs. It's just it's been an incredible climb, and I can only see it getting bigger.
So one of these penultimate moments, speaking of the evolution of football, was the World Cup in Qatar last year. There's a lot of discussion in advance about the societal issues, the human rights abuse, and then a lot of football was played there. You were there. I actually ran into you in Doha. What were your reflections from the tournament?
Yeah, I was like everyone else. I was really intrigued of how it actually got to Qatar in the first place, because I was in the room when it was actually announced. It was Russia, it was announced, and Qatar were announced at the same time, because England were heavy favourites to get one of those tournaments in our country. And I was slightly worried as how it was going to be perceived. But I have to say, from the moment I entered the country to the moment I left, the organisation, the stadiums, the behaviour of fans, I think that was largely down to no alcohol in stadiums, unless you were in VIP areas. So, and the final itself will probably go down as one of, if not the greatest World Cup final ever. So when you put all that together, I think it was a magnificent tournament.
So speaking of the tournament, let's talk about football. Let's talk about the Premier League season. There was a finish that I'm not so happy about, which was the treble for Man City.
Yeah.
There was also another sub-story there. A little-known team called Newcastle qualified for the Champions League. I saw some footage of you. We have some fans here.
Yes, I like it.
I saw some footage of you in the stands watching the game, looking pretty happy.
Yeah.
What did it feel like to watch the team win?
It was an amazing season. I mean, no one could have ever predicted that Newcastle were going to finish in the top four. Before ball was kicked, I had us in 7th or 8th at best. So for Newcastle to then challenge to get to a cup final, albeit lost to Manchester United, but then to get into 4th place and then play Champions League football is an outstanding achievement from the manager and from the whole football club. When you consider where Newcastle were 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, battling relegation, being relegated, and then getting back up to where they are now, it's a totally different football club. And what it does for our area, or for Newcastle, because we live and breathe our football, and it's the difference between Newcastle, if win on a Saturday, then everyone has a good week. If not, then that's the difference between their week. It really does mean that much to the people, because it's a one-club city, and there aren't many places that I've been to where you'll see mums and dads, boys and girls and nanas and grandas all wearing the black and white shirt. It is such a special place. So for us to be starved of that success, and the last trophy Newcastle won was 1969.
Wow.
So for us to get back to Wembley, for us to get back into the Champions League, it's been a great season.
So there's a lot of talk in English football about the relationship between money and winning. and I am a Manchester United fan. We have spent marginally less money than Man City over the last 10 years and had slightly less good results. So clearly, it is not purely down to the money. In the case of Newcastle, you had a big infusion of cash. You brought some new players in, but you can't just say it was the money. What do you credit the season to?
Down to the manager, and I think they've done it slightly different to what I think most people, including myself, thought they would do. Because when you get taken over by the people that Newcastle have, then I think we all expected them to go out and buy this and that and him and spend so much money, vast amount.
Mbappe, Ronaldo, Messi,
Exactly,
all going to be in
yeah.
Newcastle.
But they've done it slightly differently. They've gone out and bought. All right, these players, people knew they were out there, but for reasonable fees.
Isak.
In comparison, Isak and Bruno Guimaraes and Sven Botman, a centre-half, and Nick Pope, the goalkeeper. So Trippier was another one. So they've done it slightly different to how I thought they would, but that doesn't take anything away from what the coach has done, and Eddie Howe. He's done an unbelievable job. But it's really interesting now to see what they can do this summer and how they're going to do it.
So some of the other big stories going on in the league. We have some records that have been broken, some records that have not been broken yet. You watched one sensation, who again I'm slightly bitter about, a man named Erling Haaland, break your single-season scoring record. How did that feel to watch him do that?
You want the truth?
The truth.
Yeah, I mean, I had it. I think of myself and Andy Cole, who was speaking here slightly earlier. I think I shared it with him. 34 goals in that in the season. So, and I had it for, I think, almost nearly 30 years. So it was going to go one day, and if it was going to go, it was going to go to someone with a special, rare talent, and he is that, Erling Haaland. If you're building the perfect centre forward, then he is it. I don't think there's a weakness in his game. So if it was going to go, it was going to go to someone special, and he is that.
Do you think he has more success to come?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, he's 22, I think he is. So for him to get 52 goals, I think he got this season, 36 in the Premier League, to go out in his first season and win the treble, yeah, without doubt. I mean, whether he'll be there for 4 or 5 years is a different conversation, but he'll break all sorts of records. He's that good.
Speaking of another striker, Harry Kane has another record in his sights. Mm-hmm. You famously spurned Manchester United for your hometown.
Yep.
Harry has been a hometown boy for his whole career, where now it feels like we are at that point where he's going to make a decision if he finishes his career at Spurs or he chooses another destination. If you were Harry Kane, what would you do?
Well, two things. I think, first of all, he must look at what Erling Haaland has done in scoring 52 goals and winning the treble. And there must be a small part of him that thinks that could have been him, because he almost made it happen, or could have made it happen a couple of years ago when City came in for him. But I look at it from both points of view, because I appreciate he's playing for his club, the club that he loves, like I did when I went back to Newcastle. It was slightly different because we had won the Premier League already with me going back to Newcastle. So I get his loyalty. He's an unbelievable player, but he has got the record now. He took over Jimmy Greaves' record at Tottenham. So he will get a statue. But in 1 year's time, he'll be able to leave for free. So will that come into his thinking? I don't know. If I was him, if Real Madrid came calling now at 30 years of age, which I think he's about to turn 30, then I think that would be too much of a thing to turn down if that was him. Particularly the way Tottenham are in terms of transition. It might not be, if it's going to happen, it might not be for another 3 or 4 years before Tottenham start challenging again. And I don't think he can afford to do that. So he might feel as if the time is now for him to go. If I was in his position, and I know you've got different things. He's got a wife and 3 kids, maybe 1 on the way, so he has to take that into consideration. But Real Madrid, then that's a different matter.
The famously players that choose between living in Madrid and living in Manchester, there seems to be only one decision. If he does go to Real Madrid have just signed another talent who you and I both watched in person. I thought he was one of the most, Jude Bellingham, one of the most transformational players, at least
Outstanding.
I've seen in a while. What are your thoughts on him?
Phenomenal young talent. For him to do what he did when he left the Midlands, left Birmingham, and then go to Dortmund and progress his career and learn, and then us watch him. He's already a man, or he looks that way and he talks that way, and the way he performs on the pitch, he acts that way. So, yeah, he's a rare talent, and we'll see him for a long time in an England shirt, hopefully bringing us a bit of success.
So with all this movement, you transferred twice, very famously. What does it feel like as a player when you have these record fees and you're changing clubs? The first day you walk out on the pitch, what does the pressure feel like?
Well, I didn't really view it as pressure because it's what I wanted as a kid. When I was at school or when I was playing for my boys' club, I wanted to be a professional footballer, and I put everything into it. I left home at 15 for me to go and do that. So I never viewed it as pressure. I got excited and I got the knot in my stomach because of the excitement. But if someone was going to pay £15 million, that wasn't my money, that wasn't my gamble. I just wanted to go out and have fun and score goals. And I get that the world is different now because of social media, etc., and there might be more pressure on players. But I never viewed it that way. I just wanted to go out and enjoy it and have fun, because I promise you, whatever I did in my life or do, there was never, ever going to be a better feeling than seeing the ball hit the back of the net and score that goal. Never.
That's a good line to finish on, but we're not going to finish there. Speaking, you make it sound easy, and speaking of making it sound easy, the world's most famous player, potentially the most famous player of all time, has just now completed a switch. Lionel Messi, moving from Paris Saint-Germain to Inter Miami. You know, you're hearing a variety of quotes in the press that the MLS has no idea what's about to hit them. What are your thoughts on his move?
I think it's incredible for the MLS. I mean, how they're going to pay his salary is a different thing. But for him to bring his presence, if you like, to that stage, it's only going to get bigger and better. I mean, he's the best there ever has been. I don't think there's any debate about that now because of what happened in the summer. I think that was the only thing that stopped several people saying that he was the best ever, or when there was comparisons to Maradona. But yeah, I mean, I already read that the Inter Miami Twitter page has gone up already millions because of his signing. So he's a rare talent, and yeah, it'll be unbelievable for the MLS.
So we've talked a lot about this. Lionel Messi, if you value him as a media company, is arguably one of the biggest media companies in the world with the attention that follows him.
But he never talks, does he?
He never talks.
No.
I don't know if anybody in this audience has ever heard Lionel Messi speak, but I certainly haven't. And it's impressive for not speaking how much attention he gets. And he does it on the field. We've talked before just about the pressure players have in today's culture to speak on important issues and to be much more than players on a field. What do you think, and it was a different era when you were a player. Do you feel that players should have the responsibility to speak out on global issues and take a stance, or do you think it should be on the field and left the rest as optional to them?
Yeah, I do, because we have all the players, particularly more so now than ever, they have a platform that they can give an opinion. But I certainly think with players that they're managed more now than ever before, footballers, because of what they can say. But I do, at times, I think it's slightly unfair that footballers are put on this pedestal because you're expected to be eloquent, you're expected to speak to the media. But a lot of footballers are from council estate backgrounds, like I was. But just because I made my debut at 17 doesn't mean that I should be able to talk in a way that the world expects me or wants an opinion from me. But because of the media profile now with Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is, and that you can get your point out instantly, and a footballer's opinion carries a lot. Yeah, so I think it is important that we give our views in the right way and about the right things.
So much has changed since you were a player, and I wasn't going to let you off the hook with telling some funny stories from back when you were a player. Social media didn't exist. There were things that players could do. They could go out after games, and there wasn't anybody recording them. I remember there was a famous story from when you all went out during a World Cup. I believe there was a barber shop and some drinking out of a boot.
No, that was pre-Euro 96.
That's it.
You can imagine the whole world is watching because we're about to host this tournament in England, and Terry Venables took us across to Hong Kong about 3 weeks before the tournament started. China and Hong Kong, like a mini pre-season tour, I think it was. And he gave us a curfew, but lots of the guys decided to break the curfew. And that was just when mobile phones or cameras were starting to happen. And of course, the likes of Paul Gascoigne, Steve McManaman, Robbie Fowler, and I could see they were in the dentist chair in this bar, and they were throwing shots down, and et cetera, et cetera. So not only did we break the curfew, we got caught in doing it as well in the act. So our manager wasn't best pleased in Terry Venables. So we had to somehow repay him. We didn't quite win the tournament, but we nearly did with our performances. But that was just the start of the phone cameras coming out. So I learned a good lesson then.
Oh, yes. Never again.
Yeah.
Speaking of stories from when you were a player, the thing that so many people remember the World Cup, so many people remember very famous scenes from English penalty kicks. I've always wondered this. What does it feel like to take a penalty kick on a national stage? And maybe you can bring people behind the scenes. What is it like when you huddle before the five are selected? What type of conversations happen?
Yeah, that walk from I think I was slightly fortunate because I always, when it went to penalty shootouts, I always wanted to go first. And with me being the captain, I could decide that. So if I missed, which thankfully I didn't, there was still plenty of time to recover it. But that walk from the halfway line to the penalty spot is the longest walk you'll ever in your life. And there's so many things that are going through your head, because a lot of it is mind games. Because have you taken a penalty against the keeper before? Where did you put your last penalty? Did he save it? Did you score? How many penalties has he watched you or the coach watched you take? So if he stands 1 yard to his right-hand side and your thought is, I'm going to put it, do you still put it there? So there's so many things that are going through your mind. But over the years, I wouldn't say they get easier, but you get used to the pressure, used to the situation. I mean, as an example, in 1998, we went to penalties against Argentina. And the two players who had never taken penalties before had to take them, Paul Ince and David Batty. And David Batty he'd never taken a penalty in his life.
Never in his life?
Never in his life. And yet he's taken it on the biggest stage in front of millions, in front of 80,000 in the stadium. And his country depends on him. And he sort of said to me, what do you think? What shall I do? Just as he was leaving. And I said, if you've got any doubt whatsoever, put the ball down, hit it as hard as you can, straight down the middle. And he goes, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And he got up to the ball, put it down, and he whipped it to the keeper's right, and he saved it, and we got beaten on penalties, and we missed out. I sort of said to him in the dressing room, what happened? He said, there was a million things going through my mind. The goalkeeper was in the middle, and he wasn't moving, and I thought he was going to... So there's just that mindset that can play tricks with you. The best way to approach it, I thought, was pick your spot. I practiced it the night before. I knew where I was going to go, and if I hit it right, the goalkeeper shouldn't save it.
And if you miss the shot, what is the team's reaction to it? Did they rally around and support the player? You always see the famous scenes of the France player at the final walking back with his head in his hands. Does the team rally around him and make it, or is it there's so much?
Yeah, you try to, but it's really difficult if you've been knocked out of a semi-final or a quarter-final of a World Cup and you've worked basically all your life to get into that position. So it is gut-wrenching, but then again, for that person that has missed that penalty, you have to appreciate what he or she is going to go through, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
So let's finish on what's next. What's next for England? What's next for the Premier League? And what's next for you?
England will never, ever have a better chance of winning a trophy because of the squad they have now. It's the best they've had for such a long time.
It was never, ever a better time to be an English footballer when you were transferred.
That is true, yeah, so don't believe everything I say. The Premier League is only going to get bigger and get better. And
Who's going to win the Premier League next season?
probably Manchester City again, because they'll strengthen. Again in the summer, they'll get rid of 2 or 3, and they'll bring another 2 or 3 quality players in. And Newcastle are going to have some fun in the Champions League.
Does Newcastle win the Premier League in the next 5 years?
That's a big ask. I would love it to happen, but it may take a little bit longer than that.
That's a long build. All right, lastly for you, the Alan Shearer Foundation, this is where you spend a lot of your time now. Maybe you can just talk about some of your work and what you have planned.
But I had my testimonial in 2006, and we raised 1.6 million, of which I set up a foundation, it's an activity centre and respite home for disabled children in Newcastle. And we give it away for free. But to do that, we have to raise at least £250,000 a year. So luckily, over the past 10 years, we've had Ed Sheeran, Lewis Capaldi, Mumford & Sons, Jess Glynn, Gary Barlow. We've had a host of celebrities, and Sting, believe it or not, is playing for me in Newcastle next month.
Sting,
yeah. So what those funds enable us to do is give it away for free, which I think is hugely important. So I might have scored a few goals in my career, and that gave me great satisfaction. But I promise you, my foundation and seeing what I can give back and seeing the smiles on some of the kids' faces, I think that's far more important than a few goals.
I agree. Alan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone, you can see Alan on BBC, but much more importantly, you can read Alan on The Athletic. So go back. He's with us every single week. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you both. So many amazing anecdotes.